Good morning, everyone, and a good morning it is, because we're here to do the Lord's work. Members from both sides of the aisle are honored, but more importantly, we are humbled to be with our 9/11 first responders, families, and advocates. We salute Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney for her relentless, persistent, and dissatisfied advocacy on behalf of our 9/11 heroes, and thank Chairman Nadler and the entire, Mr. King, there you go, Mr. Peter King, and make the emphasis, Mr. Representative Peter King, for the entire New York delegation and beyond for their work. Let us salute them for what they have done. Thank you so much. We acknowledge them, but we are truly honored to have some very important people in our midst. The families, the advocates, the champions of the first responders and the first responders themselves. We're honored to have Jake LaMonda and General Fitzgerald, Gerald Fitzgerald, who are here with us representing the firefighters and the police officers, and you will hear from them. So in placing us in time, on September 11th, our nation suffered loss we could never have imagined, and we witnessed heroism that we will never forget. On that day of horror, our brave first responders were there for us. We must always be there for them. The Never Forget Our Heroes Act takes long overdue action to provide the financial security and support for the 9/11 heroes, survivors, and families. It is critically important that we restore the compensation of those hit by drastic unfair cuts and ensure that their claims will be fully paid out in the future. This bill honors James Groda, Ray Pfeiffer, and Luis Alvarez, and we're blessed to be here with Luisa's sister, Aida. We'll hear from her in just a few moments. I just want to, in the interest of time, go directly to a very special guest who is here with us, and that is John Field. John is a constant, relentless, persistent, dissatisfied. Where is he? There he is. There's our guide. I saw much he did saying. John is a persistent, again, dissatisfied, relentless advocate who knows his power. And he was clearly always telling us, and he is right to say it, that the people are the bosses of the Congress. That's exactly the right attitude to have. Nobody feels it more strongly than you at this time. Thank you for making today possible, John Field.
You guys got all that out on camera, right? Thank you. Thank you, Speaker Pelosi. Wow. Nobody in this room owns 9/11. Nobody owns it. But we all have our own stories. We're all here because 9/11 affected us. Whether you're a first responder, a survivor, a widow, an elected official, we've all been affected by 9/11. But 7/12/19, we own that. This is our day. Those that are wearing blue and back of me, the union leaders, we own that. And next week or the week after, when we get this bill passed through the Senate, we're going to own that day too. Sadly, Ray Pfeiffer and Luis Alvarez aren't here to share that with us. We take no joy and comfort, none whatsoever, in knowing that we're going to get legislation passed. For the men and women in back of me wearing blue, they've all been compensated. That shows you the selflessness in them. They're here on their time. They believed in me, and they worked alongside of me, and I thank them for that. But we take no comfort in getting legislation passed. It's not about the legislation. It's not about a CBO score. CBO score is just a projection, just an estimate. But those with serious illnesses, their life's been estimated and cut short. They're going to die even when we get this legislation passed. So it's not about legislation or CBO score. It's not about 90 years or another 71 years or $10.2 billion. It's about the journey and the destination. Our journey started 15 years ago, 280 trips today, marks 280 trips. 1,700 plus meetings, and pestering the Speaker and the Senate Majority Leader. And I cannot apologize to anybody for the words that came out of my mouth over the last several weeks, months, or years, because I did it for those who were sick and dying. And if you don't get it and you don't like me, I'm all right with that. And I love you. Just don't ever make me run against any of you. So today is just one of the final stops in our journey. But more importantly, along that journey has been the friendships. The friendships with all the men and women in back of me, and the friendship with Jon Stewart, who doesn't even have to be here to show you the type of guy that he is, to show you the compassion and the patriotism in him. He could be on a farm right now, rolling around in the mud with a pig, but he'd rather be here with us. And that means the world to me, and I truly consider him one of my best friends. So, Jon Stewart, everybody.
John Field has been, in terms of advocating, there's nobody that I would follow into the gates of hell more than John Field. Not that you all are the gates of hell, but sometimes it's felt that way. The man has given 15 years of his life, half a foot and a kidney, for the men and women who have suffered from 9/11. And I can't thank him enough for his friendship and allowing me along on the ride. But again, this is the semifinals. The finals are 2 weeks from now in the Senate. The men and women behind me have paved the way. This is done. This program works. It has a need. It's either needed and necessary or it's not. So when people get on the floor and they hem and haw about, well, what's the pay for and where do we go with this and how do we do, it's very difficult to watch a House and a Senate with $1 trillion deficit try and balance that budget of $10.2 billion over 10 years on the backs of 9/11 victims and first responders. It's like watching Joey Chestnut throw down 70 hot dogs in Coney Island and then at the end of it not have a Coke because he's watching, the calories. Like, don't be nuts here. Like, this is necessary, it is urgent, and it is morally right. And not only that, you have a program that works. It is faithful to the statute, it is fair to the claimants, and it is respectful of the taxpayer. You cannot ask for anything more in a program. This should be as simple as just refilling its credit card. These people deserve to have that portion of the burden removed from their lives. Because trust me, you're not fixing their problems. But you are removing this 15-year unnecessary burden placed by their own government upon them. It ends now. We will all go home and we will leave you be. So I fully expect that by August 2nd, we will have our final signing ceremony. We'll have Phil and Ida here representing Lou. We'll have Karen Pfeiffer here representing Ray. We'll have somebody representing Jimmy Zadroga. But it's going to be everybody. Jimmy's dad, Joe. Joe will be down, right? Representing Jimmy. So everybody here is going to be representing those in the community that are still suffering. But we'll all be here for that one final moment, not of celebration, but of relief. Let them exhale. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, John. I just want to make this observation because There was no issue about passing this in the House of Representatives. We had bipartisan support. It's just a matter of getting it right in terms of writing the legislation. We were very well guided by Jerry Nadler, Carolyn Maloney, Peter King, and that. But the fact that Jon Stewart weighed in on this has made all the difference in the world in terms of the United States Senate. John, we have two Johns here. John Field, his relentlessness, the advocacy of everyone was very, very important to help raise the profile of this and to have the action taken here. But the Senate was going to be a very tough nut to crack. The spotlight that John's... No, not now. The spotlight that you all, but especially the celebrity of Jon Stewart, raising it in the public view, really changed. Really made such a tremendous difference. So the celebrity spotlight, the mobilization of all of you are making today and the next couple of weeks responsible. But I want to join John in honoring Jon Stewart for the spotlight that he put in to make it too hot to handle for the Senate not to take up the bill. And with that, I'm pleased to yield to Carolyn Maloney, a champion on this issue.
Thank you, Leader Pelosi, for your extraordinary help. This time we had over 330 co-sponsors, but back in 2010, people didn't think the bill would pass, and so it was over in the Senate. Half of Congress had already come home, and we were sitting in her office as we got on the phone and called members to come back. It had passed the Senate. She kept the Congress opened until we got the bill done. That's kind of dedication. Thank you so much. First and foremost, I want to thank the New York delegation, especially Jerry and Peter King. They made it a priority of the delegation for 18 years. And I want to thank all of the first responders, survivors and their families, and for everything they did for this. And I can tell you, without people like James Zadroga, Ray Pfeiffer, Louis Alvarez, John Field, and the Feel Good Foundation, and Jon Stewart with his star power, Gerard Fitzgerald of the UFA, and Jake LaMonda of the UFOA, we would not be here today. For 18 years, it has been my honor to work with these individuals, these heroes, to pass this bill. My only regret in working with them is that it has taken too long. Now, with a bipartisan agreement, we are about to pass this bill to finally make it permanent and fully fund the Victims' Compensation Fund here in the House. But we know the fight is not over. After our votes today, we will officially pass the baton to Senator McConnell, and it is time for him to keep his public promise that he made to the heroes to bring this bill to the floor immediately and get it done before the August recess. When the planes hit on 9/11, our first responders didn't hesitate. Firefighters, police officers, medical and construction workers, volunteers rushed to Ground Zero, the Pentagon, and the Shanksville crash site. This was a national attack by terrorists, and we had a national response. In the nearly 18 years since the attack, the death toll continues to climb. We as a nation have a moral obligation to take care of the people who took care of us and those who take care of them now, their families, because they are ill and cannot work. First and foremost, for their service that day and the days and weeks and months to follow. And secondly, because of the toxic lie our government told them that it was safe to work on the site when it clearly was not. I've grown close to many of these heroes, and I say with great respect, I hope none of you ever have to come back to Congress. This program needs to be made permanent, and it needs to happen now. If you remember 9/11, you remember that as a nation, we vowed to never forget. We will not rest, this whole delegation, until Congress turns that promise into a law to help the first responders and survivors. It is the least that we can do as a grateful nation. It is the right thing to do for the right cause, for the right people, for the right values, and I am thrilled it is happening today in the United States Congress. Now I would like to introduce New York's bravest, Gerard Fitzgerald and Jake LaMondo. They are representing the 20,000 firefighters and fire officers of the FD New York. And on 9/11, our city lost 343 of these brave men and women. And since then, we've lost nearly 200 more. And 11,000 of these brave men and women are in the World Trade Center health program with related illnesses to 9/11. They are a symbol of why this program is so important. The true twin towers of New York are the FDNY and the NYPD. We thank them for what they did on that day and every single day. They risked their lives to protect us. We thank you.
Hello, I'm Gerard Fitzgerald, president of the Uniformed Firefighters Association in New York City, and I'm happy to be here. And we've been here before. We were happy 9 years ago when this was passed the first time. We were happy 4 years ago when it was passed the second time, and we're happy again that it's moving forward, but we don't want to come back. We just don't want to come back. John Field and John Stewart both put it out there how many times they've been down here. I'm not a fraction of that, but they've done great work, continue to do great work and put pressure on it. We do what we can from where we're at, but you know, we've had John McNamara was one of the first. We had Marty Fulham was another one that came down, and then of course Ray and Louie and Detective Zadroga, everybody. You know, there's so many more that have died and are lost, and still we have many suffering. You know, visiting hospitals and funerals. So we're grateful that it's where it's at, but please get it done. Let's not have to come back here again. Let's celebrate as was said, but our celebration would be the fact that these members or future members don't have to come down here and beg to be taken care of after what they've been stricken with, whether it be disease or the family with death. So thank you very much for allowing me to speak. This is Jake LaMondo, the president of the Uniformed Fire Officers Association.
Thank you. Jake LaMondo, New York City Fire Officers. Today's a very significant day because on the day our nation was attacked, the words that rang across our nation is that we will never forget. And today is significant because through the leadership of our Speaker, Pelosi, Majority Leader Hoyer, Carolyn Maloney, Jerry Nadler, Peter King, and the entire New York delegation, we are signaling across this country that you have not forgotten us. This is just not a firefighter or a fire officer issue. This is about every brave American who's responded down to the rescue and recovery organizations. There's many people to thank. The Feel Good Foundation, champions in this cause. So I just want to take this opportunity, and I would be remiss, though, if I did not stand here and thank the families of those people who made this journey down. They made the journey when the clock was ticking. I've seen a lot of acts of courage and bravery in my time in the fire department, but I never witnessed such courage and bravery as Detective Louis Alvarez when he made his last trip down here to have his voice heard so that we could wake up all our elected leaders to say, let's get this done. Thank you.
I'm Congressman Jerry Nadler. 18 years ago, I was here and rushed home when I saw on television the attack on the World Trade Centers, because that was in my district, and I knew a lot of the people there. 9 years ago, probably the most emotional moment of my service in Congress, it was 9 years ago when I called up the Zadroga Act for consideration on the floor of the House. What we had seen in the interim, the attack on our country, the 343, I think, firefighters who died that day, the police officers who died that day, the first responders, and the residents and workers in the area who died that day, and the people who were subject to the toxic cloud that day. But in the ensuing days, we saw something also terrible. We saw the federal government ensuring people that the air was safe to breathe when we knew it was not safe to breathe. My office spent countless hours calling up parents at Stuyvesant High School and other schools saying, don't send your kids back. Never mind what the Board of Education is saying. Never mind what the mayor is saying. Never mind what the EPA is saying. Don't send your kids back. Don't go back to work on Wall Street. And to residents, don't move back into your apartments. But they were being assured, everyone is being assured, it was safe. And the people, the first responders working on the pile, the first 3 days, there was a possibility of saving people buried there. And I don't blame anybody. But after that, for the next month or so, people worked on the pile, firefighters, police officers, iron workers, first responders of all sorts, without proper respiratory protection in what was a cleanup operation, not a safety operation. And they should not have done that and should not have been permitted to do it, but they did it selflessly because they were falsely assured by the EPA and by the mayor that things were safe. And we knew they weren't safe. And as a direct consequence, and the area was never properly cleaned up, although we were screaming about that until we had EPA hearings the following year on that. As a direct consequence, many, many people are sick today or dead who would not have been but for the malfeasance by some of our government officials. And that's why I always say we owe a double moral burden, a double moral debt. One debt because our country was attacked and we must support the victims of that attack. A second debt because a lot of the people who are sick or dying or died are because of the malfeasance of officials of our own government. And so we are here today to finish part of that task. When we passed the Zadroga Act back in 2010, and I remember vividly sitting with Peter and Nancy and Carolyn in Nancy's office, calling people back from the airports, come vote on this, after the senators held their congratulatory press conference. And that was one day. But we knew that a 5-year bill was not good enough, but that's what we could get then. And then we had to reauthorize it in 2015, and we got a permanent, basically permanent, to 2090 extension of the health fund, but 5 years for the Victims Fund. Today we are completing that job in the House. We finished the debate a few minutes ago. The vote will be shortly, and it will be a successful vote. We presume, we hope, and we trust, and we demand that the Senate will follow through. I want to thank everyone involved in this, especially the Speaker of the House, without whose extension of support this would not have happened. This would not have happened in 2010 or 2015 or now. And I'm now going to call up a young woman who was a student at Stuyvesant High School then, who went back to school, who wasn't even present on that day on 9/11, but who went back to school afterwards. And she'll tell you about the consequences. Lila Nordstrom.
Thank you so much. And I think on behalf of the survivor community, we really want to thank Congressman Nadler for making sure that as this conversation has continued, for decades at this point, that the survivor community never gets forgotten in the discussion, that we remain a part of this conversation, and that we continue to have access to these programs. My name is Lila Nordstrom. I was a student at Stuyvesant High School. I was there actually on 9/11, but I also returned to school less than a month after the attacks. I was one of 19,000 public school students that returned to the contamination zone during the cleanup. I myself was there for 8 months, and I am now, seeing a spike in illnesses among my classmates, and that includes serious illnesses and even deaths. So we're incredibly thrilled that the House is moving quickly to pass this legislation. We're looking at the Senate now, and I have a message on behalf of the 19,000 students and also the residents and community members and office workers who were affected by these attacks. Please do not say that this issue is an important priority for you and post a #NeverForget post every September and drag us back down here year after year to rehash the worst year of our lives. I have been coming down here for 13 years. I made my first trip down here in 2006. I was 22 years old. I came back here for the passage of the Zadroga Act. I came back here 5 years later to talk about the renewal. I have spent my entire 20s and half of my 30s walking the halls of Congress and telling people about my friends that are sick, about my personal health issues, and about the worries that we have about the future, because when you see the changing face of the responders behind us year after year, and you think that's a national travesty, what I'm looking at is my future. So I want to make sure that we don't have to do this anymore. Every time that we come back down here, it's another reminder of the fact that we were put in peril by a government that thought that a quick return to normalcy for Wall Street was more important than the health and the safety of the children who were attending school down there, of the residents who lived down there, of the people who were working down there, of the city as a whole. 9/11 prematurely ended my childhood. I was 17 years old when it happened. That was the last day that I was ever innocent, I think. But this process has taken years off my adulthood as well. And I would like that time back. I would like the time to focus on the fact that my friends are getting sick, my community is in peril, and I don't want to have to sweat it out with all of my friends as cancer rates rise, as people that we know and love pass away. And that includes the responders behind me that I have been coming down here with for years, but that also includes people in their early 30s. So I'm incredibly thrilled that the House is acting today. I hope that we never have to come back, and I hope that the Senate really does consider this the priority that they all have been paying lip service to it being for years now. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I'm Congressman Pete King, 2nd District, New York. This is really a great privilege to be here today with all of these people. But as John Stewart said, it's not a celebration. This is just another milestone on the journey to getting this job done. This is a tragedy which affected so many people, and it's gone on for so long. I want to give the Speaker tremendous credit. She got this through in 2010, got it through again this time, and of course Carol and Jerry have been on this from the very start. I have to say, I think Jerry was the first one who brought it to my attention 15, 16 years ago about how serious the health issue was, because in those days we were just worried about those who actually died and their families who died on 9/11 itself. So the full ramifications of these diabolical illnesses really was not fully known, the extent of it, and now it is, and it's really unfortunate it's taken this long. But we are here where we are today. And if there's anything that's bittersweet about it, or maybe just adds to the tragedy, is that as the people who come down here, we've gotten to know them. For instance, we knew the father, James Zadroga. We knew Ray Pfeiffer. And all of us knew Lou Alvarez. And we saw these people die right in front of us. So it's, to me, last week I was at the funeral, Carol and I were at the funeral of Detective Alvarez, and to be there and see the tremendous outpouring of police officers, community people, firefighters, everyone was there. And again, it just shows how this has affected our nation. But probably what was most poignant to me that day was the eulogy given by Detective Alvarez's sister, Ida Lugo, who is here today. So Ida, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. can't go forward without thanking so many people. I can't list them all. My hardest job has been lately to find a word more adequate than thank you. Impossible. But to Congressman King, I give you my thanks, my family's thanks, for helping my brother's second to last dream come true, and that is to be laid to rest in a national cemetery, to take place amongst all those who've gone before us, loving this country, keeping this country safe. I thank you. It meant a lot to my brother, and will give us a place to remember, not that we're ever going to forget, the amazing things he did, especially at the end of his life. Mi nombre es Aida Lugo. Soy la hermana de Luis Álvarez. ¿Qué es lo que estoy haciendo aquí hoy? ¿Por qué yo estoy aquí? Y planeando lo que iba a decir, decidí con un poco de ayuda compartir con ustedes las últimas palabras que mi hermano usó en esta tarea que él se puso delante. Les traduzco una nota que mi hermano le escribió al senador McConnell. Senador McConnell, no sé si se acuerda de mí. Mi nombre es Luis Álvarez, un detective retirado del escuadrón de bombas del Departamento de Policía de Nueva York. Yo fui testigo en el comité judicial de la casa hace 2 semanas. Quiero que usted sepa que mi hora de partir de este mundo rápido se acerca. Mi mayor meta, la legacía que quisiera dejar, es que el proyecto legislativo de compensación para las víctimas del World Trade Center, el 9/11, se haga finalmente ley. Usted tiene el poder que se haga una realidad. Por favor, examínese la conciencia y dése cuenta que esto es lo correcto. Si esto pasa, moriré un hombre feliz. Luis Álvarez. Le entrego una copia de mi placa de policía como recuerdo de mi legacía y la suya. ¿Qué puedo decir? Esto no se hizo realidad para mi hermano. No puedo decir, ya, lo hicimos. Pues aquí estoy yo, aquí está mi hermano, aquí está estamos representando nuestra familia, igual que las otras familias, tantas, que para ellos esta tarea no se ha terminado. Me sería muy feliz estar en mi casa junto a mis padres, tan adolorido por la pérdida de su hijo. Ahí es donde yo debo de estar, al lado de mis sobrinos que perdieron su padre, al lado de mis hijas, mi esposo, toda la familia Álvarez, porque así aprendimos a estar juntos siempre, en bueno y en malo. Pero aún aquí estoy. Igual que hicieron mi hermano llegar hasta aquí en sus últimas semanas de vida, cuando él debía de estar concentrándose en estar con la familia, en prepararse, él vino aquí y por eso estamos aquí. Y les pido, no nos hagan regresar, no nos hagan volver a este lugar, hagan lo correcto, completen el proyecto, la tarea con cual mi hermano terminó su vida, buscando la mejoría para la vida de todos aquellos que nos rescataron el día de 9/11. No hay más que decir. Nunca te olvidaremos, Luis. Nunca olvidaremos a todos que están aquí, que han ido antes y se irán. Gracias. Mi hermano Phil, this is my older brother Phil Alvarez.
Good afternoon, good morning. The Alvarez family is honored and proud to see our brother's name put on the bill that will go before Congress for a vote in a little while. A little over a month ago, I drove my brother down here to Washington, D.C. He wanted to be with John Field and the Feel Good Foundation. He wanted to have his voice heard. For a guy that liked to fly under the radar, he knew what his mission was, and he didn't hesitate. And he told me, you don't drive me down there, I'll get somebody else who will. And there was a lot of guys willing to do that. But one thing about my brother was he would be honored, but he would be laughing. He would be the first one to say, forget the name, but never forget the message. Never forget the message. These ladies and gentlemen behind me, like John Field said, have been coming down years and years and years to get this done. So while last week we buried my brother on Wednesday and celebrated this great country on the 4th of July the next day, we ask that you keep in mind that this task is not done. And I know you were reminded of that by John Field, by Jon Stewart, Matt McCauley, and you're reminded by those that represent us. Peter King, Speaker Pelosi, Mr. Nadler, Carolyn Mahoney, all the way down to the guy from my own town, Lee Zeldin, who got on the floor. You're constantly reminded that this fight is not over until next week or 2 weeks from now. Let's get this done for them. My brother wanted to see it done before he died. He didn't get that opportunity. But my sister and I promised him that we would be here every step of the way until it got done. I'm a retired police officer. That police badge was passed on to the Senate, to the leader of the Senate. For those that don't know what it means the world. And it meant the world to my brother, and now it meant the world to his children, to his wife, and to all of us. He knew what it meant. He sent that note so that this would get done. Not for him. His family was compensated. Not for him. But for the many guys and girls that he talked to during his 3-year battle with cancer. He knew that